I would attend the annual conference. I think the last one that we had, that AREMA had, was the live one in person was the one in Minneapolis. And for me, I went, and you didn't see where Environmental Committee 13 fit in all of those, that huge agenda of all of these presentations and, people presenting and talking and workshops. And I would look at it and think, where do I belong in this agenda? I don't see us represented in this agenda. And I think that was one of our biggest first steps was, okay, if we want to be a bigger part of the annual conference, then we have to start with understanding what our relevance is.
You may know the American Railway Engineering and Maintenance of Way Association, or AREMA, as the, quote, keepers of the manuals. You may know them as the, quote, people behind the largest annual railroad conference in North America. Heck, you may not know about AREMA at all. This podcast is designed, no pun intended, to change your view of who AREMA is and how AREMA has changed the trajectory of many railway careers over its 100-plus year history. Welcome to Platform Chats with your host, Walt Bleser, where he takes a moment to discuss the impacts AREMA has had on the very people who are proud to be called members. Are you ready to roll with AREMA?
This episode is brought to you by Unabridged Structures. Unabridged Structures provides mentorship and advisement to emerging technologies and early-stage companies focused on infrastructure. They have a proven track record of bringing technology solutions to the railway industry. For more on Unabridged Structures, go to unabridgedstructures.com.
Hey everybody, and welcome back to AREMA's Platform Chats. I cannot believe we are on to episode 4. And I will tell you today, I say this every time. I say it every time that I'm excited. This time I really am excited because I don't have one guest for you. I have two. I have two guests on the AREMA Platform Chats. That'll be the first time in history to have two guests. And the fact that we're going to do that shows you just how technologically advanced AREMA has come in its over 100-plus year history. On today's show, again, stretching that AREMA podcast dollar for you, I have Kari Harris, who currently works for Canadian National. I also have Leo Thorbecke, who works for TRC. I'm going to let them do their own introductions. I'm not going to go too much beyond that. But the big focus today is AREMA's Committee 13. And if you're like me, and you're in the structures group, and you're listening to this podcast, you immediately took your right hand, and you scratched your head and said, what's 13? Because that's what I did. And I had to think about it. And I'll tell you right now, it is environmental. And I'll tell you also, if you are in the structures group, you just scratched your head, you recognized it was environmental, and then you said, ugh, the permit people, the people that are keeping me from building my bridges. Well, that's what we're going to talk about today. And I think it's going to change the way you view C13. And I'm hoping that there are some folks out there listening to us today that actually reach out to Leo and Kari and join their committee. So with that, Kari, I would love it if you could give a brief introduction to who you are, what you do for CN. Heck, I think you might even like the Cubs, is what I've heard. So any little bit of color is appreciated here on the AREMA podcast.
You bet. So thanks for having me, Walt. As a brief introduction that he did make, my name is Kari Harris. I am with CN Railroad. I'm out of the Homewood office, which is the U.S. headquarters here just outside of Chicago. I am currently the environmental manager for what I like to refer to as the wetland and waterway permitting here in the U.S. So I cover all of the 13 plus or minus states within our eastern region of the U.S. And basically, I do just that. I manage and oversee to get any kind of wetland or waterway permit. So your Clean Water Act permitting for bridges and structures, for new track, for facilities, for maintenance, pretty much anything that may require some kind of wetland or waterway permit for construction. I help out with. And yeah, that is our goal, is to help everybody realize we are not here to get in the way, but we're here to help out where we can. So, and yeah, diehard Cubs fan, pretty good weekends. Yesterday, they're a little bit of a letdown, but the rest of the week was a good week. Lots of W's flying. So
Lots of W flags flying. I will say, for our listeners that are not familiar with the Canadian National Territory, I heard states, I heard Homewood, Illinois, Chicago area. So, how is Canadian National broken up? How do they service their clients? My understanding is they actually go from West Coast to East Coast and all the way to the southern border, which is one of the only railroads that does that. Is that right?
that's correct. So we are currently broken out into now a Western and Eastern region. When I first started with CN back in full-time 2014, we were actually three regions. We were Western, Eastern, and Southern region. So I was the Southern region, be all of the U.S. Western region is Western Canada to Saskatchewan, I want to say. And then east of there is the Eastern region. So I have two counterparts, one in the Western region and one in the original Eastern region. But in the last year or two, and I forget actually when we actually did it, but we combined the Eastern and Southern into one Eastern region. And so now I am the South Territory, I guess we could say, of the Eastern region. So that's how we're broken up. Yeah.
Okay, so it used to be West, East, South, where you
Correct.
were in the South. Now the
Yep.
Eastern and the Southern are together. Okay, and you
Correct.
are in the Homewood office now, yeah?
That's correct.
All right. Well, if you get a chance to leave that conference room, give old Sandro give him a high five. And this is a test to see if Sandro listens to these podcasts.
Oh boy,
Then he'll reach out to me.
Now the pressure's really on.
The pressure's on now. We'll see how well you guys can publicize this and turn inside that office. And Leo, I got to say, you've been extremely patient, and I'd love to just jump right in here.
No, I was going to say, Walt, you open the door, I'll walk right in. Leo Thorbecke, I'm Vice President of the Transportation Sector for TRC. We work with all the Class 1s throughout North America, and short lines, providing environmental and engineering solutions. I've been in the rail industry for 30 years with TRC, the past 5, and a lot of times, case in point here, Kari's a friend as well as a client, and I'm sure we'll get into more of that as we, talk amongst ourselves about Committee 13, the membership, and some of the challenges and great things that have been happening.
And it's my understanding you're the chairman, yes, and Kari is the vice chair. Vice chairperson. Okay. Well, I will. To be politically correct, I just learned last night that people don't call the master bedroom that anymore. It's the primary bedroom on a classic HGTV show my wife made me watch. So if you didn't know that, you know it now, and so does the rest of the world listening to this. But to stay on track, Committee 13 rolls into which functional group? Is it track?
Is this a test?
I know. I was like, engineering.
Okay.
Engineering.
Okay.
Yeah.
And Leo, you've been chairperson. It sounds like you've been part of Committee 13 for quite some time. I think it would be helpful to our listeners if you could just give some quick back of the napkin facts about membership numbers, where you guys came from, when you started, anything you want to do on a history is very helpful. Some of these committees date back to the beginning of AREA. If you listen to my podcast with my friend Steve Hill, he talked about AREA. He talked about the B&B Association. He talked about signals and communications. So where does C13 come into the picture? When? How? I think the listeners would love to hear that.
Well, I'll give you. I didn't go back in time during some of those changes, but functionally the group started off. I think it had the great title of being Sanitation Services back in the the 50s, 60s, and I think it was really with the advent of the passing of the Clean Water Act, Clean Air Act that went from the Water Oil Sanitation Services and actually became codified as Environmental Committee 13. So that's some of the historical facts about the actual committee itself. I started getting involved with Environmental Committee 13 during the what was the annual meeting that was held, or the annual breakfast, AREMA Committee 13 breakfast at the Railroad Environmental Conference in Champaign-Urbana. And that's a conference that it's on our, I believe, 23rd year right now. So it was an annual opportunity for AREMA Committee 13 to meet. And as I said, it was a breakfast meeting that was strategically held at 7 o'clock in the morning, which always meant that people were rather chipper and you ensured large attendance. Haha. But so that was it. So the kind of the mission of getting together was to kind of have a little camaraderie, discussion of the manual update. Uh, I did not get involved from being asked to be part of the ascension to chair till about probably about 6 years ago, 5 years ago, when a position opened up. It was the secretary position. To, I assumed the role of secretary. The vice chair had to quit, and I went from secretary after 2 years, 2 to 3 years, to chair when the current chair stuck around for another year and then assumed the chair. So I think during that process is when Kari got asked
Yep.
to volunteer.
Yeah. We like to say that I was voluntold.
Yeah.
So that was actually my first involvement.
That was your first involvement too.
Yes. Yeah. Kari would got involved through the participation of the Railroad Environmental Conference. So there's actually, a core group of us that I would say there's several different rail organizations that we belong to. Some of us are a little bit newer or older to them. So it's kind of like a core group of people that have been participating in the environmental field. Be it from the railroad perspective to the consultant perspective. So I think that really it's in the past couple of years, it's been a real good involvement of a core group of people, kind of helping reset the button of why are we here? What do we need to do different? How do we make this fun? How do we become a little bit more relevant? So I think some of the conversations really started to take seed in the past couple of years, and I think I dare say the pandemic helped things, but it really provided a little bit more focus as we're all used to being virtual, and it really kind of spawned our ability to form some of the subcommittees that we'll talk about, I'm sure, in a little bit more detail, and come together, use part of that bond that we've established, from knowing each other to starting these subcommittees to getting a lot of traction and making some great headway in the past, I would say, 6 to 12 months.
So speaking of relevance, how many members does C13 have?
Currently, our membership, Walt, is 34 active members. And that's a broad base from consultant, contractor to railroad.
Okay. Is that on the smaller side?
I would say that's, from the other functional committees within, what are there, 29 other technical committees. I'd say that AREMA Committee 13 is probably is in the bucket of the smaller committees.
Okay. And Kari, you joined 13 when?
I was trying to think of that. I guess it's been right about 3 years now, three or 4 years. Again, I was very loosely involved in AREMA. I maybe went to a conference here or there. And then I think it was at one of the REREC conferences that Leo mentioned down in Champaign. And, everybody's having a social hour. And I think the subject came up, and one of my coworkers said, "Kari, you should be the vice chair." And I was like, "Sure, whatever." And next thing you know, I was elected the position of vice chair, and it has been great. I'm really glad I did it, for sure. To Leo's point, the 30 some members within our committee 13, I think most of us will consider each other friends, because there are so many other conferences or groups that we all belong to, and we have that common environmental regulatory background, even though it may be different types of environmental background. It's a really well-rounded group. with lots of different experience. And, we like to keep it really casual and have fun at our meetings. And I think with the pandemic, even though we weren't able to meet in person, it did kind of push us to meet, virtually more often, just like I think with everyone else. And in everything that's going on work wise. I mean, I don't remember having so many meetings before. And now it's so easy. Everybody's like, oh, let's get on a Teams call or let's do this. And everybody just connects. And it's great because we've really found a way to collaborate even better than we used to. So I think it was right before the pandemic, we had talked and we decided to kind of, what did we call it, Leo? A renaissance. We decided to have a renaissance of Committee 13. And we started with the former AREMA president, Ed Sparks. And we approached him, and this was before the pandemic, and we reached out to him and said, we have a spring meeting planned. It was supposed to be May 2020. And we reached out to him. We said, Ed, we would love to have you as a guest speaker and kind of field some questions. Just tell us what you think in your eyes. What do you believe is the value and the purpose of Committee 13? What is the rest of the AREMA membership looking for from us? And we had that meeting. We started with him. We got some really great feedback, lots of questions, good answers. And from there, we said, okay, what's our mission statement? We looked at it from that aspect, and we formed subcommittees, and one was to be in charge with basically preparing and defining a mission statement and goals and values. And then from there, we created a membership subcommittee, and we also have and we just changed some of the names. So one is like a technical and communications. Right. Another one is webinars. So we just started out, each subcommittee only has like maybe 4 or 5 members. So it's not even the entire Committee 13, but it's a really good just way to focus in on getting things accomplished. Because I think we felt like we were meeting once, maybe twice a year. We were talking the talk, but I don't think we were walking the walk. And I think this last year just really everybody got motivated, and kudos to Leo to keep us on track. And we had more than just 1 or 2 meetings throughout the year. That having the virtual meetings was helpful, and just the subcommittees we've found has proven to be really successful. And now we're looking to expand on those subcommittees because now the mission statement is done and we've identified our goals and objectives, and how to help the rest of their AREMA membership. And so now we're looking to open that up even more. So I think that's where we're headed for next, is what more can we do?
Yeah, and what's next? Because we really use the mission statement almost like the first step for us to kind of lay the foundation for the other working groups or subcommittees. And we still have an open debate on whether it's subcommittee or working groups, what we're going to call them. Yeah, but it's like our mission statement or our vision was really, who are we? And we really wanted to codify in a very short, pithy statement who we were, the value we offered, and what our vision was, because we also recognized that relevancy was an issue, and we did see, we wanted the involvement in Committee 13. We wanted people to participate, and we wanted to give them reasons to participate, and we wanted to show the railroads the value of Committee 13.
Yeah, I heard you guys use the term relevance. I almost feel like the term reboot sounded somewhat like that's what's going on here. So do you feel that at some point prior to 2020 or 2019, C13 just needed a quick refresh? I mean, when you sit down and you start talking about mission and vision and all that stuff, I mean, that's, big companies do that. Small companies do that. What drove that, I guess, would be my question. What made you feel irrelevant? And I guess the follow-on question to that is what mission and vision what is your mission and vision now, that if someone that's listening is interested in potentially joining, what would get them excited to come to your meeting?
Well, I tell you what, it's to support the broader railroad community for all environmental engineering and maintenance of way concerns. It's comprised of Committee 13 is comprised of a diverse range of subject matter experts. We provide value through best practices, guidance, and education of the railroad community on existing and emerging regulatory trends. So, real pithy. Again, Kari helped lead that part of that process too. We decided we would have a team of 4 or 5 people and came up with that statement, collaborated. It was about 3 or 4 or 5 calls before we really condensed it down.
We did. And what was nice about it is, so it was myself being, with the railroad. It was Leo with a consulting company, one of Leo's coworkers, another consulting company, another woman who is a consultant, and we had a gentleman from Amtrak. So we felt that we had all of our bases covered to, really kind of focus in on how did we want to define it. And to go back real quick to answer your first question, I think was something about why did we feel a reboot was necessary. And personally, for me, one being the vice chair and seeing Leo's, reign eventually coming to an end, I kind of wanted to take the opportunity personally to say, let's get this kind of rebooted now and let's see where we're going, so that by the time I did step in, maybe things would be a little more organized and, focused, not organized. We're always organized, but just get that focus in place. And I think one of the biggest things for me was that I would attend the annual conference. I think the last one that we had, that AREMA had, was the live one in person, was the one in Minneapolis. And for me, I went, and you didn't see where Environmental Committee 13 fit in all of those, that huge agenda of all of these presentations and, people presenting and talking and workshops. And I would look at it and think, where do I belong in this agenda? I don't see us represented in this agenda. And I think that was one of our biggest first steps was, okay, if we want to be a bigger part of the annual conference, then we have to start with understanding what our relevance is. And that's when we reached out to Ed Sparks. I mean, Leo, I don't know if you have a difference of opinion, but that's what it was for me.
Yes, and very much a part of that. And I had seen, Walt, it was also kind of a numerical component, and that was the percentage of railroads participating in Environmental Committee 13, and just even the membership. So, we had, I had, going back to what AREMA Committee 13 meeting used to look like, where it was an annual breakfast and get together. Something we've introduced just several years back was during our spring meeting, and it was a best practice we copied off of another AREMA committee, and that was, we're going to host our Environmental Committee 13 meetings at a railroad in the spring. So we rolled that out, and we had 3 years doing that at a rail location before the pandemic hit. So just little things to say. We want to be relevant to railroads, so we're going to host a meeting at a railroad. And I think part of it was just, how do we refresh ourselves? How do we listen to the voice of the railroad? To what are you looking for? How can we better serve you? And in speaking to Kari, you look how broad AREMA is, and how much, how many, again, 29 technical committees, the manual for railroad engineering, and the communication and signals manual. It touches so many components of rail operations. So does environmental, but we are such a really an unheard voice, and we want to be more relevant. We want to prove our relevancy and really have that cross pollination. So I think that was part of
And we want to be open. Yeah, we want to be an open book. We want people to write us and ask us questions. We're here. I feel like the rest of the AREMA membership they're our customers, kind of like our internal customers, where we're here to answer questions and to help out. We know environmental permitting changes constantly, right? It's with every administration, it's changing right now. So it's a lot of information to keep up with. And it's as difficult as it can be for us, the actual environmental professionals, to try to keep up with it. It's even more difficult for someone who's going to build a new bridge or replace a bridge on culverts or build a new track siding or build a new facility somewhere in the yard, whether it be new construction or existing operational activity going on for stormwater, wastewater. Environmental regulations are constantly evolving and changing, and it's a lot to keep up with. So that's where we want to be that committee that anyone can feel that they can come to us and ask those questions. And if I don't have the answer, then I'm going to know within our committee where to go to get those answers, because I know I don't know everything about the environmental regulations myself. I have my niche, and that's where, my comfort zone. A lot of people ask me, what about, noise pollution? I have no idea. I have no problem saying that I have no idea, but I can find someone who does have the answer. And that's where it's that well-rounded, very dynamic group of people that we have within our Committee 13. So we are small. We're on the smaller side, but we're very dynamic.
And you're fun.
And
we're fun.
Exactly.
We know how to have a good time. We like to keep things casual and fun too. So,
I think to hear you say that you're not relevant or it's difficult to find your relevancy is funny, in the sense that I think in any project that you take on in the railway industry, especially in the infrastructure maintenance of way, you're going to be dealing with permits. And as time goes on, the environmental piece is going to be more front and center than it probably ever has been in my lifetime. And I think you're going to have, or we probably already have, a strong interest from the youth coming out of school, joining the industry in the environment, frankly. I think a lot more people really care about the environment, period. Whether that's helping get the right permit for a bridge job might not be the first thing on their radar, but it's something that has to be done.
Yeah.
So let's just jump right in there, and I'm going to go right to Kari. How is C13 attracting those members? And if you were looking to speak with a recent graduate from whatever college, why would you encourage them to join Committee 13 and AREMA in general?
So with our membership subcommittee or working group, whatever I've decided to call it, which we may have a subcommittee to determine how to call ourselves. But we do have a membership working group subcommittee. And within that, some of the things we just started out with the basics, right? We took the mission statement and those values, and we updated our committee page on the AREMA website. So we started with that because we looked at it. We're like, wow, there's not a lot of information here. So we started with updating that. We have an upcoming webinar next week, May 19th. Myself will be presenting with one of our senior managers from Bridges and Structures, Mr. Ray Baker, a legend within the CN and EJ&E Railroad, I would say. And so with that webinar, we created just a standard template, again, of the beginning and the end of the webinar to show who Committee 13 is, our mission statement, our values, and how to join, so that anyone watching the webinar and that are there to learn more about environmental permitting in general can see that, they could be a part of our group. And we're always open to anyone. You don't have to have an environmental background, right? We are looking for anyone who is willing to help us out to actually better understand, back to that relevance is how can we be more relevant to bridges and structures or to maintenance of way or to signals? And so if you're looking to join a new committee, we're here and open to hear your input on maybe we're missing something. Maybe, it'd be great to have someone from structures to say, hey, you know what, we're always talking about what we're missing is that connection to how do we know how to get ahead in our permitting, especially for something like bridges. Historic SHPO can be a huge delay in having to replace a bridge that may have some kind of historic status. And that's been a hot topic now here for the last few years. So if there's someone in Bridges and Structures who wants to join our committee and be a member, an active member, that can help us determine how to communicate, how to move forward with some of those permitting issues, then, we'd love to, welcome you aboard.
Yeah, and speaking to that, Walt, also one thing I'd like to kind of bring up is that pre-pandemic, during our meetings at the Railroad Environmental Conference, which is typically held about a month and a half after the annual AREMA. Typically, REREC happens end of October, first week of November. One event that we did host at the University of Illinois was the student chapter trivia night, which was kind of the role of the current chair to put together a Pepsi or soda and pizza event, and it was railroad trivia that we would play in competition amongst the groups. And then we also we'd host the AREMA dinner, and then Kari was part of the team the onset of really developing one of the subcommittees on membership and local. How do we drive the newcomers, the student population? So decided to include the student body into the AREMA dinner and then populate them one per table or two per table. So they got an opportunity to actually sit with a consultant, sit with a contractor, sit with somebody from a railroad, and have a nice casual conversation throughout dinner in the evening. So there was a lot of opportunity to mingle with professionals in that field. And I would also say to the student population, why AREMA? Why AREMA? Just the broad base of the technical committees. You may not know what you're wanting to focus on in your career. You're fresh out of college or graduate school. Maybe you have an idea, but AREMA at least affords you an opportunity. It's kind of like an a la carte menu. You can sit there and participate in a couple different committees and kind of get a taste for that, and maybe influence and even network with individuals that might provide a career path for you.
Yeah, it's a great way to network. Great way to network and meet people. I mean, it's like I said, it's such a dynamic group of people.
Fair enough. So let's talk. I'd like to cover a couple more things before we break. I heard webinar. So is this your first webinar? Is this have you done multiple? It sounds like if people are listening to this, they may still have a chance to quickly attend the webinar since it's coming up. You said May 19th. Is that right?
That's correct.
Okay.
May 19th. I think either 1 or 2 o'clock in the afternoon. I forget now.
Yeah, it's not the 26th. It's the 19th.
Yeah, it is May 19th. Don't listen to Leo. But yeah, it's is it officially our first webinar, right, Leo? I think.
It is.
Yep.
It is our first webinar. In fact, it's great to have you kick it off. It is our first webinar. But the only thing that we came close to this was to host a workshop at the annual meeting. But with declining membership over the years, that was stopped about a decade ago. And I think part of it was a Sunday morning at 8:00 was when that meeting get together usually happened. But this is our first webinar, and I think, Walt, speaking to a lot of the changes, a lot of the refocus that AREMA has put behind webinars, their website, having it be more user friendly, kind of expanding some of those tools is great. So yeah, this is our first one, and as Kari mentioned, great topic. So I'm looking forward to having a lot of people attend and get something out of it.
Fantastic. Well, I hope you guys have a fantastic turnout, for lack of a better term. I guess that would be a virtual turnout on May 19th. A couple other topics I did want to discuss since I had you both here. Leo, we talked in a previous conversation about some of the challenges that AREMA is facing that we think other professional organizations are facing, and perhaps even some of the ones that other professional organizations aren't facing. So as we move forward and C13 reboots into the next decade or so, what what challenges do you think we have? And I say we as the royal we, all of us that are members of AREMA, when it comes to engagement with membership and getting new members on board and retaining them, and what advantages do you think we have, given that that could be our 100+ year history, a solid industry, anything? Either one of you want to go? I'd love to hear thoughts on this one.
Yeah, I'll go ahead and just kind of kick it off. I mean, it's we're barraged. You don't open your email up in the morning without some announcement of some webinar or sign up for this or sign up for that, especially in the past year. But it's a competition for time and money, right? Return on investment. Like, hey, everybody's wanting you to kind of pull in for this or that, but and I think that's why we're only as good as our membership. We're only as good as the people that are working with us and who we're serving. And it's a rail organization, so we need to be relevant. And we've already talked about that. Hence the mission statement and walking the walk now. But why AREMA Committee 13? I think I'm a history buff, and I think history means a lot. AREMA is a convergence of four legacy associations. If you look at the oldest one, AREA is over 100 years old. So there's that steeped history. But more important to that is the broad base of the organization. Really, it's all encompassing. There's not an aspect of rail operations that's not covered under AREMA. I think from a technology standpoint, things are becoming AREMA is trying to play catch up and become more virtual, more accessible, a lot more things available via the web, via AREMA's website. So I think we're looking to capitalize on that. I think it would be exciting to be able to access our subject matter experts from AREMA Committee 13, the Environmental Committee, that somebody could maybe go to the AREMA site, pop in a question, access, have it kind of be a live type page. So I think really the diversity of talent that and the ability to serve and work with that talent is important. So I think those are a couple things that pop to my mind. I don't know, Kari, if you want to expand upon that or have a little bit different view.
No, I mean, I think that's, you pretty much said it. I feel like we're, a broken record. I mean, we're looking to expand our membership to, again, I think the title Environmental Committee 13 can be quite, I don't want to say intimidating, but I think people think that they have to be an environmental professional to join. And that's not the case. That's not what we're looking to do. And so I think that can be our staying power, is we're looking to grow and expand on what we already have. We have our core group of environmental professionals. We're not looking to turn those, new people away if you're an environmental professional, but we're also looking to grow bigger, to accept new members that can help us continue to grow and expand on how best to communicate and correspond with the rest of the AREMA membership. I think that's one of our core goals next. That's like the next step, right? So we've kind of rebooted. We're trying to reintroduce ourselves to the rest of the AREMA membership. And now I think our next step will be to look to see how can we expand on just the core group of environmental professionals that we are. How do we open that up to the other technical backgrounds that people have?
I actually don't know if there is a much better way to close this out than what you just said, because you guys are open to more than just environmental professionals. You're looking to cross boundaries with anyone in the bridge world, the track world, the CNS world. that has thoughts on this subject. It sounds like there is a pretty wide bar of entry, if you will. I don't know if that makes any sense,
Sure.
but yeah, and it sounds like you got the right leadership at the helm, and you're kicking it off with a webinar here. When is your next in-person meeting? Assuming people can get a hold of you through the arema.org website. Are you going to be meeting at the annual conference? I guess that's going to be virtual.
Yeah, that's virtual. But I think we were talking about the REREC conference that we've referred to. That's at University of Illinois, Champaign every year. I think this year the plan is, as of now, my understanding is it's going to be a hybrid. So there will be probably, I assume, like a limited capacity of in-person attendees, and then the rest will be virtual. So we are looking to have our own limited capacity in-person meeting at that. But other than that, it probably won't be until next spring, like for a full in-person, hopefully knock on wood.
Yeah.
So.
And you're going to have to define REREC for me, and you're going to have to define what date will that be?
Railroad Environmental Conference, which is supported and helped backed by the Association of American Railroads. But just from a little historical aspect, it was really, the idea was spawned about 24 years ago. The Environmental Affairs Committee for the railroads would meet once a year at the Contaminated Soils Conference. And about 24 years ago, the comment was, gosh, we're more than just dirty dirt. Railroads are more than just contaminated soils. Why do we meet at that conference? And that was also held every year at Amherst in Massachusetts. So you had the Western roads traveling there. So long story short is there was a gentleman, Dr. Chris Barkin, who was going to be starting up a rail program at University of Illinois, and was working for the Association of American Railroads, volunteered to host it at that his new university that he's teaching. So in Illinois was the first to host it, and it's been there for 23 years. So that is the Railroad Environmental Conference. That is the main event for us in the environmental field, to get together annually and present kind of like the larger AREMA, except on a much smaller perspective. So it's usually 2 days of nothing but environmental presentations. And so yes, we're going to use that. I think you picked up one thing, is that we like to have fun. So we discussed that during our virtual meeting just about a week and a half ago. Is we need to get together. We're used to that. So the plan still is to do a hybrid approach. So they're going to have a limited number, and we'll have our limited number of our AREMA Committee 13 together. So let's be figures together that the spring meeting will be at a rail facility in full attendance.
And we'll be looking to form a social subcommittee to our list of subcommittees.
There you go. Okay. And so the one thing I missed there was the date for that REREC conference.
It's the first week of November. Yeah,
it did just get changed.
So I don't know if I have that.
Okay.
Yeah, it is now the end of October. So it moved from the first week of November to the end of October because of a facility issue as far as booking. So it is, I could tell you in a second, it's over my left shoulder. It is the 26th and 27th of October.
Okay, perfect. So, well, as the country starts to open up and reopen up, prospective members can find Kari and Leo at the REREC conference at the end of October this fall. And if not, and in the interim, let's hope that they hit you up on that webinar, May 19th, and reach out via the arema.org website. I would love to thank both of you. I feel like this was a success. Having two guests on was fun. I think the talking over each other was minimal. It's probably from a year of Teams and Zoom meetings. We've had more than our fair share of practice. So thank you both for being a part of the AREMA platform chats. And I look forward to seeing both of you in person sometime soon.
Sounds great. Thank you.
Thank you, Walt. Thank you, Kari. And thank you all that took the time to listen.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you for rolling with AREMA on today's episode of Platform Chats. For further information about AREMA, please visit arema.org or contact us at info@arema.org.